Welcome to Date with Danu right here on Hi TV. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is on our segment called The Naked Truth. And as my first set of guests on the show, I have a real-life couple. They have become great ambassadors for falling in love and being proud about it. As my first guest, I'm happy to have Aritha and Dave.
Hi, my name is Aritha Wickremasinghe. I'm a lawyer, a banking finance lawyer, but also a human rights lawyer. Date with Danu is a really interesting and fun show. It highlights very important issues, but it also allows and brings forward various personalities in Sri Lanka to discuss about these issues. I was very excited to be the first guest on this show with one of my best friends, Rishini. That was probably more than a year ago. And now I know this is also the first show Danu is doing since the pandemic and the lockdown. So in a way, it's a rebirth of the show. It's starting over again, and I'm glad to be here again to support the show. Well, you know, I've known Danu for many years. He's always a hilarious person. I love his silliness and his dry jokes, but he's also someone with a really good heart and someone who always means well. He does really incredible things, and he has this ability to put very controversial issues in a more light manner. And I think that's an asset, despite the fact that he keeps hitting on my boyfriend a lot.
Hi, my name's Dave. I'm here in Sri Lanka working with a company called Lanka Charter, where we build and manufacture yachts and charter them around the coastline. Date with Danu is always a fun show to watch. Always wondering what either antics he's going to get up to or who he's going to shame on the show. It's always fun and interesting to see who's up next. Danu is a fantastic person. I think what he does in the community and everything for people is marvelous, and you know, a lot of people look up to Danu for what he does and who he is, and he always does it with a smile and a laugh running down the hallway.
So when we started this segment called The Naked Truth, it was just an experiment, and our last episode did very well. Thank you so very much for all your comments. We see them, and thank you so much for being a part of the awareness. And today we're talking about homosexuality. It's tough to say it when it comes to mainstream media, but it's time that we speak about it. And today we have Aritha and Dave. Thank you so very much for joining us. And Aritha actually was my first guest when I started Date with Danu. You might be my lucky charm, or I don't know.
Well, the show's still going on.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I will take it that way. Dave, welcome. And just to give you a side note, I really told Dave to dress up. He's wearing a hand-drawn, handmade, local designer's shirt. Darshana. And I love his work. So I just wanted to say his shirt is very special.
It is.
Thank you.
He looks very handsome in it.
Oh, how sweet. All right. So I just want people to know. So Aritha is a well-known lawyer. He has created awareness about lots of things on social media. He's not worried to or scared to throw people under the bus, and that's all for a good cause. And I always worry, and I'm also quite curious to know what's his latest status update, because they're not a small. It's like a book. But Dave has found love and got himself to Sri Lanka, and I think you have now become such a Sri Lankan.
Thank you.
And you're like living in the best area of Sri Lanka, touching the south.
Yeah.
And tell me about what you do.
So I'm working for a company called Sri Lanka Charter, where it was originally designed to make sure there was jobs and education for Sri Lankan people who might have left school earlier, something like that. So we build manufacture boats, we charter them out for tourism, we also sell for export. So it's
Did you
fun
know
job.
about Sri Lanka before you met Aritha?
I knew about it.
But did you ever feel that
if you asked me where it was on the globe, I probably would have taken some time.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
But when you met Aritha, did you think that you'll actually end up living here?
Yeah. I'm like, everything just fell into place. I'm like, from the moment we met, from then on, it's been an easy, perfect kind of moving forward with a relationship. It's been.
But Aritha,
great.
you had all your chances of living in London and continuing your life there, but you decided to come back to Sri Lanka. Let's speak about what made you come back here.
A few things. I was obviously a lawyer in London, and I had a very successful career there. And I was also quite involved in making corporates and big law firms standing up for social issues at the same time, and using their economic power to push through social change. And I got recognized for the work I was doing in galvanizing the big banks, the big law firms, the big corporates to start changing their policies on certain issues. So I got that FT ranking by the Financial Times. I was ranked as a #1 future leader. It was with Mark Zuckerberg. So for me, it really brought a lot of things into perspective, where I started thinking, okay, what's the point of me doing all of this work here in a country which doesn't really need me? And for me, it was important that I walked the talk more, and I wanted to do it in Sri Lanka. I thought my work would have much more impact here. And of course, one of the things I was helping start at the time was a Think Equal education program, which is about teaching children social and emotional intelligence and peace. And there was a lot of discussion around reconciliation at the time as well in Sri Lanka. And I really wanted Sri Lanka to be the leader in something. For a long time, we're always a follower. We're seen as a third world country that always takes instructions from someone else. And I thought, well, here's a program which Sri Lankans have been so involved in creating and pushing through. And I wanted my country to take the lead in that program.
That's amazing. One of the questions that I did want to ask you on this show was about Think Equal. It's an education platform that is actually in certain classrooms as a curriculum, of course under a different name now, where they're teaching about respecting everyone. It could be overlooking skin, race, caste, gender, sexuality, whatever it is, to love someone for the fact that they're human and to let them live. And it's as simple as that. But equal rights and equal education sort of merged together when it came to you, and people started creating problems. We're going to speak more about it, because the fact that your personal life was brought into an education platform that was to create awareness about loving everyone unconditionally, and you never promoted love everyone from your same gender, but it got confusing there for a lot of people, and it became like a social media So we are going to talk more about it, but we want to bring someone who brings a different perspective on this show, and he's a psychologist, because when you are homosexual, what actually goes through, what do you go through emotionally, physically, and also the society that sort of calls you names or puts you in a box or makes you think different just because you choose to love what you want to love. So let's speak about that when we do come back, so do stick around.
Hi, my name is Nivendra Uduman and I'm a counseling psychologist in independent practice. So watching the show Date with Danu, I think it's always been a very interesting and entertaining show, but it also brings out very real issues, societal and cultural issues that he addresses in a very light-hearted way that I think makes it very accessible for people from all strata of society to watch and understand. So I'm here today to talk about mental health and psychosocial sort of context where people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex would live in Sri Lanka and the kind of issues they would face. So I think, that's what I'm here to really address today.
Welcome back to the show. It's Date with Danu, the Naked Truth edition. With us today, we have Nivendra joining the conversation. Aritha and Dave are already on the show. Nivendra, thank you so very much for joining us. I know you have a very tight schedule.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know it's such a taboo subject in our country, being gay. And as a psychologist, I'm sure you would have worked with people who have emotionally battled this within themselves. What's the most common thing that people have come and told you? Like, do they say, is it an illness? Do I feel that it's a sickness?
Yeah, so it's a mixed range of things. I mean, looking back at about 6 years since I've been practicing here, so I've been working with not just people who are gay, but the whole LGBT community in Sri Lanka. And one of the common things I hear is it a mental illness? That's what people ask, and also that's what their parents ask when they bring people in to want to be changed.
Right.
So that's a request I get a lot of the time. Can you change this person, right? So it takes a lot to kind of explain and to help people understand that it's not something that can be changed. Right?
And do people get it when you say, do parents understand?
Some parents do. Some parents are not ready to accept it. So you got to also respect that. Right? So one thing is that it's a mental illness. The other thing is that I'm a bad person because I feel this way, or I am attracted to people of my own. Karume, right?
Yeah.
Parents say that a lot. Karume nisa, right? And also, you see a lot of what we call internalized homophobia. Because from society you get negative attitudes or negative kind of things thrown at you because you identify as gay, and over time you also tend to internalize a lot of that, right? And you turn that into self-hatred. You start to hate yourself, or you start to loathe yourself as a person, and that really significantly affects a person's mental health, right? So a lot of the time people believe that people who are gay develop mental health problems because they are gay, but I want to say that that is not the case all the time, most of the time. It's because mainly of the pressures they experience from family, from their community, from school, from society, that makes them undergo or experience mental health problems. So the stigma, the discrimination that people face in the workplace, at school, in their villages, wherever they come from, plus this constant messaging that they receive that, oh, this is bad, this is a sin, it's wrong, and the fact that they internalize it, so those are some of the things that I've seen. And also there's this manipulation that goes on from family that says, if you don't change, I'm going to end my life, right? Or if you don't
it's like
change,
a mental game. Yeah, so it's sort of they're cornered to like make a decision that looks good on the family. I'll actually get more into this, and thank you so much. So clear and so perfect in terms of giving us the insight to it. Something that we did speak about is Aritha, when people sort of confuse the education for equality and equal rights when it comes to sexuality. Tell me, how was it when you were trying to bring in this format to Sri Lanka, and when this was triggered on social media?
I mean, the Think Eco program, as you know so well, was about teaching children social and emotional intelligence. So it was teaching children compassion, respect, kindness, critical thinking, and problem solving. It had nothing to do with sexuality. You can't, it was a program for children who were the ages of 3 to 6 or 7. You will have to be perverted to think that you could possibly teach children about sexuality at that age. And it just happened so that I was an openly gay man who was one of the founders of this organization and who was leading the program in Sri Lanka. And it was a very, very painful experience for me when people, including from politicians to certain media, to certain religious priests and monks, accuse this program of trying to spread homosexuality to young children just because I happen to be a gay man running the program. You know, my ability to run an education program, my ability to be a lawyer and advocate on issues
was questioned.
And it's also completely irrelevant to my sexual orientation.
Definitely.
My sexual orientation is something that I am. You know, you don't question a heterosexual man's capacity when he is doing some kind of work. You don't associate someone's religion or ethnicity if they were running an education program. So why was my sexual orientation relevant?
Dave, when you took that flight to Sri Lanka, and of course the fact that you all found love is one thing, but living in a society or in a country where names such as Ponnek, Pensiek, Kolloganegek, these are the terms that you hear. And these are painful terms because in Sinhala, it's more cruel. It sounds more cruel. When you work with locals, have you felt that you have been given, people are thinking about these things in the back of their mind? Have people reacted in a different way?
I've heard people that I've worked with using these names and using these words.
And assuming that you'll never understand because you're...
I don't think it's even that. I think it's just part of the culture of, you know, it's okay to use these words, you know, that nobody will actually say, stop using that word. It's offensive. And so I had to do that and tell people, you know, this is not right what you're saying. And from then on, people understood, okay, it is offending someone, so I'll stop using it. So it's just education at the end of the day as well, you know, making sure that people are aware that you are offending another person by just using that name. I'm like, even before I came out myself, I used to use these words growing up just to project off of me, to make sure people wouldn't think I was gay when I was growing up.
So that you mix in with the society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And this is you coming up, you have been brought up in a European mindset, and we always think, we Asians tend to think that way. You know, sometimes you are bullied by somebody who is homosexual because he or she has a lot to cover, just so that they can fit in mostly with the society. You know, there's a huge element of religion when it comes to sexuality, because that also sort of comes in with the family pressure. You know, you're going against all of this and it's wrong, you know, we've been brought up to think so. Let's speak a little bit about it because Dave comes from a very Catholic background. Let's see how that goes when we do come back after the break. Do stick around. It's Dave with Danu, The Naked Truth. In conversation with Dave, Aritha and Nivendra, we're speaking about being gay. And it's that simple when you want to just say it like that. So religion has a huge part in this. I would like to come back to you a little bit about when parents come with these. Most of these kids, how do they open up and say it? What is that triggering point where parents feel like something is wrong and we have to take him to a psychologist?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with behaviors that parents deem as being out of the ordinary or or being deviant from the norm that is set by society.
How do they come to terms with the fact that this is a mental problem?
Because it's been seen like that, and even though scientifically we know that it's not a mental health issue and it was taken off of the diagnostic manuals that we have a long time ago, even health professionals still sometimes believe that it's a mental health problem. So you can't really blame, you know, common man for thinking that. So therefore they believe that, because also there have been health professionals and there still are health professionals in our country who have propagated the fact that this can be changed, people can be converted, people can be made normal. So that belief also kind of contributes to people bringing their children or partners sometimes into therapy or mostly to see a psychiatrist as well, not always a psychologist, right? So, yeah, and I
how
think
does this religion card get thrown around? No matter what faith you come from.
it gets thrown around quite a lot. Even though, for example, let's say if you're Buddhist, right? Because we live in a majority of Buddhist culture, Buddhism doesn't really say anything about homosexuality or being gay being wrong or it's a sin or anything about sexuality at all. But of course, people interpret it in different ways, and it comes across as again a sin, right? And also people from other religions, especially people who practice Islam or people who practice Catholicism, they tend to come in a lot with the idea that, oh my God, I've committed a sin, and there's a lot of guilt. That is also that is also kind of maintained by the reactions that they get from the clergy, the family, the church, or the mosque, or whatever, right? And school, if that's a young person, and we tend to put those ideas into their head, saying that, oh my God, it's so shameful that you're this because it's a sin in religion. Religion says you're not supposed to be like that. It's prohibited, etc., etc. So that adds on to the pressure that they already live with when it comes to mental health, when it comes to their emotional well-being. So that is one thing that I see quite a lot as well when people come in. But we have to understand that religion is one part of a person's identity. Their orientation is another part of their identity. But there are lots of other identities that constitute a human being. However,
as a psychologist, tell me, a lot of people say society has a huge part of somebody becoming gay. The way you have been brought up, it could be what you have been exposed to, whether you were abused when you were a child. Is that a factor, or is it that you're born?
See, I think we always have to take into account the whole nature and nurture argument, right? Of course, I think there's a huge biological, genetic disposition to this, as well as the environment that a person is exposed to very young, when they're very young, right? But that's not to say that there's one thing that causes it. A lot of people, we put these labels on saying, oh, because this person was abused, or because this person experimented as a young child in school, that they ended up gay, which I don't agree with, right? And also because they were brought up maybe by a single parent, for example, mainly like if it's a boy brought up by the mother, not exposed to the father figure. So those are some stereotypes that we tend to put on, which again scientifically there's no backing for it. And personally also, I mean, I don't agree with that, because I believe that whatever your identity is that you're born with, that is who you are, right? And ideally, I think what Aritha was talking about as well with the whole Think Equal project is that we have to kind of focus on just respecting a person for being human. We don't have to respect the person because they're straight or because they're gay.
True.
Right?
It's just what they are.
Yeah.
Dave. Sorry that I'm like Dave. Now here is your question for the hour. When you were growing up, you had a Catholic upbringing, church, Bible, all of these were a part of it. How was it when you had to tell your family or accept it within you and then narrate it to the people who are close to you?
It was very difficult. I'm like, with the church, as you were saying, there's this guilt, there's the fear, you know, and it's you always think, what are other people going to think about you? And it's a very macho environment that you're in. You have to be a man's man growing up in Ireland. And the church also had a big hold over Ireland at the time then. The church did fall down during the 90s, which gave an opportunity for people to be out, and, you know, it was a cool period to have a gay friend. And so this started the transition in Ireland that everyone wanted a gay friend. And so from then on, you know, people were more accepting. They changed everything in Ireland that way. People were like, oh yeah, he's gay, so what? You know, it did change that. But growing up, I'm like, there was that fear of what other people think, you know. Even coming out, you were asked, you know, have you told anybody else, you know. There was the fear of, you know, the neighbours knowing, or what would Helen down the road say, you know, this kind of thing. So it's more about being comfortable in yourself and saying, I can do this for myself. And I used that kind of mantra when I was growing up and coming out and coming to terms with myself. But people have this pressure, you know, that they're going to be rejected or beaten up or cast out. Now, this does happen as well, but I'm like, if you're strong within yourself and give yourself confidence, you can go anywhere and do anything.
Just like Helen in Ireland, there's always like a Sitavari or somebody down our lanes as well, trying to create a bit of a story. Aritha, you were born with 2 other brothers, such a tomboy kind of a family, I'm sure. How was it for you? And because I always, for me, it brought me to tears when Aritha was abroad and when he put up this picture of the 2 brothers and him with the rainbow flag embedded, saying that it's great to have siblings who support you. And that's phenomenal, to know that you are sandwiched with love, no matter what you choose to be. How was it when you were growing up? And how was it for your mum and dad? Because Sri Lanka has this extended family nonsense, no? You know, they are the ones who are more keen about your wedding. They are the ones who are more keen about what you have studied. They are the ones who are more keen about who you are dating and what you're doing where. So how was it for them to deal with it like a son?
We have a huge extended family. My mother is one of 11. My father is one of 10.
My
They all have 2 to 3
competition,
children. Any family event, you're guaranteed 80 to 100 people just from the family to turn up for
Elope,
it.
child, elope. Just run.
But our family at the same time has always been very accepting and very progressive.
And how is that? How is it?
I mean, it's not like my father's side, they're mainly from Colombo. My mother's side, they're from outstation. They were civil servants. They traveled around the country. And maybe traveling around the country is part of their civil service job really allowed them to open their horizons on the diversity of people out there. I mean, ever since we were young, we were, you know, me and my cousins, we would, for example, you know, cross-dress for fun. You know, we'd put up these little theater plays for our grandparents where we'd sort of switch gender roles. And it was always encouraged. We were never told, oh, don't do this, boys shouldn't dress up like girls, boys shouldn't do this. We were always encouraged to be ourselves, to express ourselves the way we wanted to. So when we were, I'm not the only gay person in the family, I have another gay cousin. So when we were coming out, when we were realizing our sexual orientation, going through puberty, it was just another normal experience for us where we were just expressing ourselves like the way we used to always express ourselves. And our family was always very supportive, you know.
Let's speak about what society does to you when we do come back. You know, going to a tuition class, it could be going to school, being friends. You know, when you are in school, you need to have a gang of friends. If you're the single one out and there's a reason why you may be having some effeminated movements in you, or you could, like, if it's a girl, they say, oh, she's such a tomboy. You know, that tomboy is fun. The minute it becomes a butch, it's another huge problem. You know, these are the terms that we are made to hear always. How is it when you have to sort of live in this society that still is a punishable crime in our country? We'll come back with all this and more. Do stick around. It's a Day Trip Danu. Back with us on the show and in conversation with Aritha, Dave and Nivendra. Want to speak a little bit about the society's impact. It's such a huge part of being gay, and also this fact about coming out. Nobody who is heterosexual comes out. Why is there a coming out for being gay? Like, I've always questioned it. But let's speak about society. What type of an impact does society have on someone who is gay?
Well, ideally it shouldn't have an impact, but in Sri Lanka especially, and I think a lot of other cultures, it has a very significant impact, because I think one thing is we really need to acknowledge the stereotypes we have around gender, right? Forget sexual orientation. If you look at gender, you know, about this being masculine and being feminine, and then when you take someone who identifies as gay, also we tend to look at them through the lens of masculine gay man or effeminate or feminine-ish gay man. So that gender binary that we have created also pervades into relationships that are diverse than heterosexual or heteronormative relationships, right? So in that angle, society has an impact where it determines even then how the more dominant partner and the submissive partner should behave, even though we know that that is very fluid. It can change, it's diverse, nothing is fixed in stone, but we have made it so because in our heads it's easier for us to comprehend, okay, there is this partner and that partner, right? And it goes into other relationships like trans relationships as well, right? Other than that, I think when you take religion, culture, all these other stereotypes that we have, society does impact. So it starts very early on at home, right? When you're told to behave in a certain way, or when you're told don't cry like a girl, you know, or right? So things like that. Right? And that moves on to school, where again you're expected, especially for example if you're in a public boys school, you're expected to be this very macho boy who is able to protect themselves, who is able to defend themselves, who is able to fight, who is able to be the, you know, the, what we call the chandiya, right? And teachers also, who are ideally supposed to be non-discriminating and accept all students for who they are. At least in my experience when I was in school, I remember very specifically that boys in my class who were slightly more effeminate, or in the batch who were more effeminate, they were always very subtly discriminated against, even by the teachers, right, who were supposed to be progressive and understanding, or they claim to be. So that's it starts there, right? And then that also pervades into the names that you have to hear, even from teachers, right? Where teachers themselves also bully you for being different, right? And I think it goes on and on and on throughout life. University, right? And also, like I said at the start, because of these negative attitudes that come from society, right? Even in the health services, even in the legal system, even if you go to the police station, right? It's everywhere.
It's an overall thing.
It's overall thing.
Aritha, as someone who's also a lawyer, just explain to us, what is the law about being homosexual?
It's a very good question, Danu, because the law itself is very unclear. I think it's a misconception to say that being homosexual is criminalized in Sri Lanka. Now, if I may in verbatim say what the law actually says, the law prohibits carnal intercourse against the order of nature between man, woman, and animal.
Now so that means the whole country should be in prison.
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine on what this actually means. Now, of course, we can refer to case law, right? Now, the entire empire got this law, not just Sri Lanka, part of the British Empire. Sri Lanka has very little case law on this because very few people have been prosecuted under this.
And how do they come to know? Because animal and women, it's all put in the same thing.
Yeah, it's all put in the same thing. And a lot of the case law actually has been against heterosexual people, not homosexual people. And the courts have held that any form of sex without a reproductive purpose is unnatural. So that has included oral sex, anal sex, and it could also mean using condoms and the contraceptive pill.
Yeah, because there is no,
and in fact, in one particular...
But now sex has gone into vehicles, computers, you name it, they're using it all.
Yeah, I mean, you could, even one court said that mutual masturbation was a criminal offense because because when you use your hand like this, you create an orifice, and when the penis goes in, when you're masturbating, that's intercourse. And because you clearly can't have children reproduce that way, that is intercourse against the order of nature.
So what happens if it's a wet dream?
Well, if you're not using your hand, you're okay. But
it's a huge problem. So what is an offense? Now, if I'm holding his hand, can somebody arrest me?
No.
They can't.
They can't.
But they can definitely say something to you.
I mean, yes, they can harass you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the fear, and that's really largely what happens in Sri Lanka is police harassment against LGBT people, because there's a perception that it is being LGBT that's criminalized, and therefore, and because of the social stigma, the police knows that they can harass, they can arrest, and sometimes they take sexual favors from LGBT people. They would take bribes from them, and then they let them go. They very, very rarely take them to courts. Now, that does not mean that they don't take people to courts.
They do.
Yeah, they do. We are in fact in a case right now where the police is prosecuting against three gay men for having sex in private, no witnesses. Besides, the only witness is where they actually ask someone to confess who else they had sex with, and therefore they're using those people to prosecute. Now, those things are unlawful. The police can't do that, and that's because the Attorney General, the main legal officer of this country, has said from 2014 onwards, almost every year like a parrot, he repeats that discrimination against LGBT people is unconstitutional, and you cannot use these laws in a discriminatory manner against them.
So this is a tip-off that has got these three men arrested.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the uncle of one of the participants saw a video which one of them had recorded. So you must never ever record yourself having sex. And then he took this video to the police. The police then went to this one of the participants and said, okay, who else have you had sex with, gay sex with? And he named some other people, and then they went and arrested them. You know, there was no witness, it was completely in private, and the thing is, they can't do that.
Yeah, because then also they didn't like rape someone.
Yeah, no, it was consensual.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so confused. So in our country, it's still legally wrong to have homosexual sexual activity. Is that correct? Did I
yes,
word it right?
Because it is certain sexual activities which is
That is
criminal.
wrong. Okay.
So whether they're committed between heterosexual people or homosexual people, that's irrelevant. So any form of sex without the intention to reproduce
Is wrong.
is wrong.
Okay.
The court made an exception for oral sex if it leads to vaginal sex after. So if you end your sex, if you basically ejaculate and come after getting a blowjob, that's criminal. But if you move from getting a blowjob to having a vaginal sex, that's fine. And you must do that with the intention to have children, basically.
I just need a wall at this very moment. My head really hard.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
hard
who
to
cares,
understand
right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares what
Very
people are
hard.
doing?
And these were written when?
In like 1860 something.
And they were way more interesting than we were.
Yeah.
Or we are.
The thing is, the Supreme Court asked this question in 2016 when a case went up in Sri Lanka. Supreme Court said, should you really be policing what people are doing in private? That is not the purpose of the law.
And what was the answer?
And the police, basically, was a case of two people who were caught having sex in public, to be fair. Went all the way to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, look, these people consented to it, so there's not going to be any punishment for them, let them go.
But till then they were arrested.
Yeah, they were, I mean, the case went all the way
up
to the Supreme Court.
I know that Nivendra has to go, I know you're AG, but I want to ask you just one more question. You come from a heterosexual lifestyle,
Yes.
you have a lot of friends. What do they say? Especially in the field that you are in, you would have met so many people. What do your friends say in you working on issues like this?
Well, to be honest, I haven't had so much of flack from anyone, except there are a few people in the profession who still believe that it's unnatural, it's wrong, it can be cured, it can be changed. So sometimes when you get into arguments or discussions around this, sometimes it has the potential to turn a little ugly, because something I'm very passionate about is equality and to be ethical in making sure that no one is harmed in treatment. But other than that, I haven't had any kind of negative flack, except for, like, for example, if I'm teaching my students about LGBTIQ issues, then at the start there's a little bit of sir, monawada me kiyanne, right? But as we go along and they really understand what we're talking about, then it becomes easier.
Thank you, Nivendra. On that note, I know you have to go, but thank you so very much for being here. You brought in a different angle to this conversation, and that's amazing. And continue doing what you're doing. And I think it's very, very important that people like you speak up for issues like this. Thank you so very much. We're going to continue speaking a little bit about the legal side to this, and also how can we take a step forward when it comes to name calling when we do come back after the break. Stay tuned. This is Date with Danu, The Naked Truth. The final segment right here on Date with Danu, The Naked Truth, in conversation about being gay. And that's what we are talking about. Now, the legal system really, it's crippled when it comes to having a discussion about this topic. So if you do think about it, using a condom is illegal.
You could argue that using a condom or selling of a condom is an accessory to a crime.
Because it's a crime. Do you think this constitution would ever change?
It's not the constitution, it's the penal code.
Oh, okay, would it ever change?
I mean, we would require our parliamentarians to change it. But I think the courts can take a step forward and reinterpret what this means. Now, we saw this happening in India, which has the same provision. And what the Indian court said was, consensual sexual relations between two gay men or two lesbian women is not unnatural sex. So they reinterpreted what unnatural sex means to exclude same-sex consensual activities. So across the world, courts have now reinterpreting and changing some of the absurd judgments of the past. And it's time that I think Sri Lankan courts also step up and start reinterpreting. And we are seeing courts do that. Now, the Supreme Court judgment in 2016, it was specific, the appeal came specifically on the sentence. Okay. Because these two people had been sentenced for gay sex. But in public, mind you, this is something which happened in a car park in Maradana. But I think the Supreme Court was a bit angry that instead of prosecuting these people for public indecency, they were prosecuting them under unnatural sex. And the Supreme Court has the power to interpret, but because it was sentence specific, it said, look, these two people consented, therefore there is no sentence.
And out you go.
Yeah. In a way, the Supreme Court has said two gay men can now have sex in public, and it's not an offense.
Another case of that. But this case of these three men having sex on one day and a video going out and an uncle having a case against it, where do you think that will end?
I mean, this is a very particularly troubling case. We met the people accused in this case who are actually the victims of police harassment. And I advised them, I said, look, let's appeal to the Supreme Court for a fundamental rights challenge. This is unlawful arrest. They were arrested and detained. They were kept in remand custody for 5 days. I said, this is unlawful arrest and detention. This is a violation of your rights, your fundamental rights. And the Attorney General has repeatedly said that these laws can't be used against LGBT people. But they all refuse to go to the Supreme Court because, most of them are not out about their sexual orientation. They are ashamed of their sexual orientation. And therefore, they know if it goes to the Supreme Court, it'll get much more publicity.
And that'll highlight them, and socially they'll be named and called.
Exactly. So they rather take the risk of a magistrate sending them to prison for a year than actually go to the Supreme Court to clear their name out and assert their fundamental rights. And that is the social situation we're in.
And that's where the social stigma comes into
Exactly. It sucks.
It's quite sad.
But the police will never come and arrest someone like me for my sexual orientation. I am very public and vocal about these issues. But because they know I am very well aware of my rights and I can't be made ashamed of who I am, should they
harass? No cards against you.
Yeah, they know I will go straight away to the Supreme Court if something like that was done to me. Therefore, they'll never target people like us. They will always target people who they know are not out, who have shame, and who can be easily manipulated and prosecuted or gotten some money out and then let go.
Another question I just wanted to ask. There's understanding in Sri Lanka, all these gay men are forever just dressing up like women and dancing in a corner, or they're just, making a fool of themselves. These are statements that we hear. What is your take on this? Dave, you would have seen there are different levels of gay people. And there are different lifestyles of gay people, and also different spending capacity. So sometimes when you're openly gay, it's very hard to find a job, because people first see you as a gay man. And the fact that I spoke to Aritha about it, amount of great work Aritha has done, there'll be yet one or two people in this world who will say, oh, that gay lawyer, right? There's always that little thing that comes along with it. What is this mindset, and when do you think this will change? As somebody who's an outsider to this country and someone who's from this country.
Like, education, I think, brings around change. So it's about educating people, making people aware. Change is always difficult. It has to be, really pushed at times to make people aware. In Ireland, it was the 90s for the turning point of people becoming aware and people understanding what gay meant, or that gay guy down the road.
Yeah.
I'm like, these terms are still used in Ireland and out in the country, but they understand, and they have no problem with gay people around the area. As for locally,
yeah, I think visibility is important.
Yeah.
The more and more of us that come out and show, look, there's a diversity of us.
Yeah,
professionals, and there's a diversity of expressions of humanity. And as the more we become visible, the more we speak up, then the more we become part of normal society. So we have to step up ourselves as a community, challenge stereotypes, challenge authorities which are oppressing us, and speak up for ourselves. We have to hold our own backs.
Sometimes I always like to share a personal experience, and this takes a lot for me to say it on screen, but yet I will say it. My family just became half for me, because my father's family decided to move me aside because they were embarrassed about what I choose to love. I always say that, what if I have chosen not to love anyone, and had it as a secret all my life and just lived with it within me? But it's a call that I had to make. And what really shocked me is my own cousins, who are like my age or even sometimes younger than me, followed what they said, and they just moved away from me for the only reason they thought I'm an embarrassment. So I always wonder, out of all what I've done in the past 30 odd years, I'm not letting my age out in this process as well, too many things out on there, the only thing that they were able to see is just this. Is it all that life sort of boils down to? And I know of friends of mine who have been DM'd saying, oh, you're with him, isn't he like this? End of the day, there's nothing ill about it. I think we all just live the same life. We all enjoy a nice Maulupang. End of that, we all celebrate Christmas, we all celebrate Aurudu. It's just everyday life. It's just that one thing cannot define a whole life. Aritha, I think the things that you spoke about, the legal system, really is going to make a lot of people think about where we stand at this very moment. Gay or straight, I think people need to be worried right now. Dave, thank you so very much for being here. Thanks for coming in your very stylish shirt to speak about it. And I wish you all the very best, guys. And it's amazing to see that, that term, it's quite cliche to say it, but love wins. It's actually true. Love has to win no matter what it portrays.
Love wins.
Thank you so very much for being here. Thanks for narrating your story. Thanks for bringing out a different perspective to this topic. As always, nice having you. It's my second innings with him. I'm not going to have you again. That's about it. This is done. That's it.
I'll be back.
On that note, we need to wrap things up on Date with Danu, a different show where we speak a little bit about the naked truth. Until we see you with another episode on Date with Danu, you take care and have yourself a good day.